Welcome back to So You Really Want to Learn Latin, and today we are in chapter 2 of book 3 and we are going to be dealing with the ablative absolute. Now, I told you last time the ablative absolute is a belter of a construction and it allows you to do some really clever little things, turning sentences inside out, setting the scene, all sorts of wonderful things. So, what is an ablative absolute? Okay, an ablative absolute is where you have a noun or a pronoun in the ablative with a participle in agreement with that noun or pronoun, and this little phrase is going to be used independently of the subject or the object of the main sentence, and it's going to be used to set the scene or give some sort of information about the circumstances around what is going on in the main clause. Okay, now I'll come back later to why it is I've sort of made this fuss about it being independent from the main clause. But you know, before we get on to that, let's have a little look at what I mean in practice. Okay, so you can do this with present participles, you can do it with past participles. In theory, you could also do it with a future participle, but it's very rare, so we won't waste time on that. Okay, so we're going to take a noun. I'll do it with nouns because, you know, they're more kind of useful. This does work with pronouns as well. So we're going to take a noun, we're going to put it in the ablative, we're going to get a participle in agreement with that noun, and it's going to create a little phrase which we're going to use in a longer sentence, and this little phrase is going to be a kind of scene setter. Okay, so if we have a sentence such as Puella spectante pater discessit. Okay, 4 words, nice short sentence. Puella spectante pater discessit. Now, we would do the normal thing. We would go down to the main verb and we would find discessit. He, she, it, or a noun in the nominative singular departed, and we'd go and look for a noun in the nominative singular if there was one. Now, puella is in the ablative, okay? If someone was being kind, they would have marked that final A with a macron to tell you it was ablative. But just, you know, take it from me, that's ablative. Puella is in the ablative, so it is not the subject. Pater, however, is in the nominative singular. So there's your subject. The father departed. Okay, so the father departed, but what's going on at the front end of the sentence? Puella spectante. Now, spectante is from the present participle of specto. Remember, you go specto, you get it into its present stem, spectar, add ns, you get spectants. And spectante has declined like ingains, and it's gone down into the ablative singular. Spectante. So puella spectante are in agreement with one another, and if you translate them absolutely literally, using an obvious translation of the ablative with the girl watching, okay, spectante, it's present participle, watching, so with the girl watching, comma, the father departed. Okay? Now, you might not translate it like that in your kind of final version, but that is exactly what it means. With the girl watching, the father departed. Okay, so the subject of the main verb is pater. He is the one doing the action of the verb. The father departed, but you've got this kind of scene setter, which has, in this case, come at the beginning of the sentence. It could come anywhere, actually. And it's just telling us a little bit more about what is going on. Notice it doesn't tell us anything about what the father is doing, because he is the subject of the main sentence. Okay, leave him alone. But elsewhere in this whole kind of story, we've got this idea that there is someone doing something else separately from the subject or indeed the object. And in this case it is the girl. With the girl watching, the father departed. Okay, now I'll just do another one, this time using a PPP, a past participle passive. So if you had puella monitor pater discessit. Okay, so we've got the same idea that the father is the one doing the main verb, the father departed, pater discessit. But again, you've got this kind of scene setter at the beginning. Puella monitor. Okay, monitor is coming from moneo, that is the PPP, and it's gone into the ablative feminine singular, and it's agreeing with that girl. Puella monitor. Okay, they're in the ablative, in agreement with one another, and they're nothing to do with the subject of the main verb, which is pater. So, with the girl, monitor, having been warned, okay, with the girl having been warned, the father departed. Okay, so again, you've got this idea of a kind of scene-setting phrase going on that is telling us a little bit more about the circumstances in this sentence, but it's nothing to do with the father. The father departed, okay, but with the girl having been warned. Now, in both of these examples, we can do a little bit better than to translate them so literally. So, with the first one, we had puella spectante, pater discessit, and we translated that initially as with the girl watching. But you could say something like, while the girl was watching, the father departed. Okay? And in the second one, where we had puella monitor, we translated that as with the girl having been warned, the father departed. But we could say something like, once the girl had been warned, the father departed. Or, after the girl had been warned, the father departed. Okay? And just for the sake of completeness, we've done a present participle, which you remember are active. We've done a past participle passive. Now, ablative absolutes work really well with past participle deponent type forms. Okay? So, for example, you could have said something like puella profecta pater discessit. Okay? Puella profecta pater discessit. Now, once again, the father is the one doing the main stuff in this sentence. The father departed. But in this sentence, he did it puella profecta, with the girl having set out. Now, you've got to be really careful with deponent verbs. Profecta, again, it's ablative feminine singular. It's coming from profectus, which in turn is coming from proficiscor, I set out. But if you remember, the past participle of a deponent verb is active. It has an active meaning. So that word profectus means having set out. It does not mean having been set out, which actually wouldn't make any sense in English anyway. Okay, so puella profecta means with the girl having set out, pater discessit, the father departed. And again, you could put that into more natural English by saying something like, after the girl had set out, the father departed. Now, my advice for you when dealing with ablative absolutes is always to translate them literally first, because you will not go wrong. If you translate it literally, giving it a nice ablative meaning, with the something having been somethinged, or with the something, somethinging, okay, you won't go wrong. You can then, once you've got it literally, you can then put it into more natural English. Okay, so let's have a little go at that. We've got in the book exercise 2.1. We just want to translate some basic little ablative absolute type phrases. And these don't have the main sentence at all. They are just the phrase to get practiced at it. So, for example, hostibus victis. Okay, hostibus victis literally means with the enemy having been conquered. Okay, and you could see how that could fit into a longer sentence. With the enemy having been conquered, the general was very happy, or whatever. Okay, next one. Patre spectanter. Okay, patre, with the father, spectanter, watching. So with the father watching, and then something happens. Agricola monito. Remember, Agricola, although it has kind of mainzer type endings, is masculine. So Agricola monito means with the farmer having been warned. Okay, number 4, regina regente. Okay, regina regente, with the queen ruling. Okay, you can see how in a sentence that might be something like while the queen was ruling. Okay, but we're just doing these literally for now. Okay, number 5, libris lectis. Okay, with the books having been read. Number 6, now this one uses a pronoun, nullo discedente. Okay, nullo discedente, with no one departing. Okay, now that might be something like because no one was departing, or, you know, while no one was departing, something else might be said. Okay, we'll just whack our way through these. Mensa parata, with the table having been prepared. Talis iactis, with the spears or missiles having been thrown. Legatis missis, with the ambassadors having been sent. And finally, number 10 has got a deponent, exercitu profecto, with the army having set out. Okay, the army having set out. Okay, so there are 10 little examples of ablative absolute phrases. It is a noun or a pronoun in the ablative. It has got a participle in agreement with it. Okay, and critically, it is independent of both the subject and the object of the main verb. Okay, so if you were going to put those into Latin, and you had to put into Latin something like, as we do in exercise 2.2, after the king had been killed. Now, we could do that using postquam, okay, and rex inter effectus est, after the king had been killed. We could do that, no problem at all. But equally, if the circumstances are right, and the king is neither the subject nor the object of the main verb, you could use an ablative absolute for that. And you could say, rege inter effecto. Okay, literally, with the king having been killed. Okay, another one, we might want to say, after these things had been done. Okay, with these things having been done. Okay, so hic haec hoc, Latin for this. And we don't need the word things, because that's understood. So we're going his factis. Okay, ablative plural, with these things having been done. His factis. When the story had been told. Now, get rid of that word when and just say, with the story having been told. Fabula narrata. Okay, now a present one. While the young man was following. Okay, so you can imagine a sentence where it said something like, while the young man was following, the soldier told his men to attack the city, or something like that. Okay, and we want this little phrase, while the young man was following. Okay, ablative absolute. Latin for a young man, jovenis, third declension. So we're going jovene, and then while he was following, sequor is I follow. We need the present participle, sequens. Get it into the ablative singular, sequente. So we would have jovene sequente, and then the sentence would continue. And one more. While the girls were fleeing, puellis fugientibus. Okay, so they are incredibly nifty little things. I'll just do a couple more things for some practice. If you've got the full sentence, so as we move on, we're now into exercise 2.3. The first one we've got is hostibus visis imperator exercitum suum in campum celeriter duxit. Okay, normal rules down to the main verb, duxit. He, she, or it has led, or he, she, or it led. Is there a noun in the nominative singular? Back we come, and not at the very front there isn't, but we quite soon get to imperator, the general. So, the general led. What did he lead? Let's see if there's an object. Exercitum suum. The general led his army. Where did he lead his army? He led it in campum, into the plain or into the field, or onto the plain would probably sound better. How did he do that? He did it celeriter, he did it quickly. Okay, so the main sentence is all about the fact that the general led his army onto the plain quickly. But why or when? Well, he did that hostibus visis, with the enemy having been seen. In other words, after the enemy had been seen, after he had seen the enemy, the general led his army quickly onto the plain. Okay? So, an ablative absolute is a really good little participle phrase used to set the scene. Sometimes it's used to explain the scene. You know, why did the general lead his army quickly onto the plain? Well, he did it probably because he had seen the enemy. Hostibus visis. But at the very least, he did it after he had seen the enemy. You know, with the enemy having been seen, the general led his army onto the plain. Okay? So do you see what's going on here? Participle phrase in the ablative. It's called an ablative absolute. They are incredibly common constructions in Latin. So now that, again, as with all of the stuff I tell you, once you've met it, you'll start meeting it again and again and again. They're really, really powerful things. We'll do one going the other way. After the slaves had been warned, the master returned to the forum. Okay? After the slaves had been warned, the master returned to the forum. Now, the subject of our main verb is the master. So the main verb in that sentence is returned. The master returned to the forum. So we're going to have Dominus ad forum rediit. Okay, he went back to the forum. But when did he do that? He did that after the slaves had been warned. In other words, with the slaves having been warned. Servis monitis. So the whole thing, you're probably going to put that at the beginning. Servis monitis Dominus ad forum rediit. Okay? Now, these things are wonderful. Just a little thing, you know, It's always nice to have something in your armoury of things that you can bring out in a pub quiz. So the phrase vice versa is actually just an ablative absolute. It's wike versa, and that just means with the change having been turned. Okay? So with the change having been turned, in other words, if you turn that round and about, you get vice versa. Okay? A lot of the little phrases we use in English are in fact just Latin phrases, and there's a good example. Okay, now I hope that all made sense. We will do another lesson on this next time, just to show a few more complexities with the ablative absolute. But until then, keep up the good work. Do work your way through the exercises. As you know, I can't stress enough, it's good for the soul, but it's also good for your Latin. Work your way through the exercises. If you don't have access to the answers to check your work, you can get them from our website. Hope that goes well, and I will see you back on this channel very soon.